I am Grégoire Hébert and I'm principal developer at Letiel, same company as Matthias. Few years ago, I started to work with REST APIs and I wrote a book about it, a book in French, just because it hadn't any book in French. There's a lot of literature in English, obviously, but not in French. And why? Because we are working with REST API from years now. And I had that knowledge. The knowledge I want to share today is a topic that I encounter usually in fintech, in bank situation, mutual insurances, where you are stuck within a context where you cannot really upgrade your SI, and you are stuck, let's say, with HTTP 1.0 or 1.1, just because you cannot easily upgrade your infrastructure into HTTP 2 or 3. And obviously, as everyone does, you want to have performances, you want to have maybe sequential operations that is improved lately in HTTP 2 and 3, we're gonna see that, but you cannot. What are we gonna talk about? What the subject and why, some specification details about, some research and implementation I did with API platform, this is the main topic around this, usages, alternatives, and what's next. Ready? All right. So, sequential operation with REST. I've tried to write a maximum of notes so I don't go anywhere else. If we are in a performance and economical approach, we want to optimize sending our request. When might we encounter this situation? Maybe we have to submit a form in multiple passes, like wizard form. You know? So this is a situation. Other situation is maybe you want a group of different unrelated requests to be sent, but you want to be sure that every request is valid as a group. This is important. And well, what can we do about it? Okay, that's the second point I made. Sometimes also we want to exploit a resource or the result of a call API right after its creation, maybe the creation of a result, without waiting the result to be sent, because you already know that you're going to use it and then send it back to your backend system, maybe for sending a signal or something. And maybe you cannot afford a queuing system or working system, maybe a dispatch system. Maybe you cannot do that in a specific context. So what do you do usually? Well, you get the signal that your operation has been created properly, and then you send it back. Right. What if I am in the context of REST? What does REST entail? Well, it entails that I have to use HTTP, the protocol, of course. If I'm using HTTP, I have to be stateless, meaning that there is no link between two requests being executed successively on the same connection. This is a problem. It's a problem, especially if my users are trying to interact with certain pages with consistency, some user experience too. Like if I am using an e-commerce system, I really like that it keeps in mind what I've been selecting before without somehow sending my message too late. Some resolutions. Thanks to the evolutions of HTTP protocol, there is this. With HTTP 1.1, we have the pipelining, and HTTP 2, the multiplexing. Who is aware of pipelining? By hand? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, some. Okay, and multiplexing? Same persons. Okay, same people. Right. Okay, so if I am running an HTTP request and I am behind TLS, I am secured. What happens? Then you have the TCP connections, okay? I can talk to the web server. Then I have these exchange for TLS. Okay, now I can contact my server securely. And then, only then, I can send my actual request. Get me this resource, post this U1, right? And we have to do this for each resource we need. If I am speaking of, let's say, a classic website, first I want my page, then maybe my client, my brother, get the HTML. From the HTML, oh, there is a CSS to get, a JavaScript to get, an image, another image. Every time there is a new thing to get from my server, new connection, I get the answer. New connection request, I get the answer. This is HTTP 1.0 and 1.1 as a baseline. The first evolution is pipelining. Pipelining is nice. I can send all my requests almost at the same time in parallel. The only difference is that I will still get them in the same order I've asked them, which can be a problem. We're going to see this. And in multiplexing, then we don't care of the order. If I send 4, let's say the request 1, 2, 3, 4, and I receive it in a 2, 3, 1, 4, doesn't matter, because in HTTP2, each request is marked with an ID, and the server responds with the same ID to match them again. Right. And in HTTP3, which has been released as a stable version quite soon now, it was in June or July, I don't remember. Maybe someone. Really, it was recent. It's even faster because they decided to do everything at once. So if I show you the previous schematics, this one, we do all of this in 3 steps. So it's even quicker. Okay, but the limitations with 1.1 and 2. The 1.1 first problem is HOL, the head of line blocking. That's a problem I mentioned before. It's saying that, okay, maybe you can receive other requests before, but you won't be able to treat it before the first one ended. If it's because my server responds quicker, can happen. If it's because I have a cache in between, it's even weirder. Let's say I have 3 requests to send, but my value of my get 2 and 3 are in cache. They come back almost instantly. But because the first one is not in cache and takes longer, I have to wait anyway. The second problem is the hop by hop. The pipelining option has to be activated, and to be activated on the whole line. I mean, I have my client, my brother, that will send a query to my server, but what is in between? What sits in between my client and my server? Maybe a reverse proxy, maybe an API gateway, maybe a cache vanish, maybe, I don't know, name it. I am not sure when I'm sending my request that all the subsequent servers, intermediaries, will have this pipelining activated. This is the problem of hop by hop. Maybe there is one that does not allow it. Right. And it's only working on idempotent operations. Who's not familiar with idempotent? Oh, okay, almost everyone is aware. So we know that we can only send them on a request that does not change a state if I call it again. And in HTTP2, we saw that, okay, I don't care now that the order I receive the request or the response, because I have my ideas. Somehow it's cool, but sometimes it's a trouble if I want to ensure that my operations are executing in a particular order. I don't want to change a value or trigger a workflow somehow if the thing it's based on is not created yet. Makes sense. Okay, but really, if I cannot be in HTTP2, if I cannot be in HTTP3, then it has to be HTTP1, and we are a lot to be concerned about this. An alternative to these issues and performances is that an HTTP connection is limited, and first and foremost is linked to the domain the connection is made on. So if I open a connection to mywebsite.com, I'm stuck with this connection. If I want a new connection in HTTP1, I need to wait that this one is closed before doing a new one. So something that has been done for a moment now is the domain sharding. I will create www1, www2, www3. It's a trick to open multiple connections where in the end, behind these domains, it's the same applications, right? And the thing that I'm gonna present now are batch operations, which is another way of sending multiple operations at the same time. We are talking about batch requests. Here is the result I want to have on the Swagger UI, API batch endpoint. This is a request. If I follow the RFC 2616, it has a request line, the start line, then a group of headers, then I have a new line, an empty line, and eventually my body, my payload. With this structure, I want to send multiple requests at once. First reflex, if I have this ID, I am probably not the first one to have thought of doing something like this. So I have to scour the internet to find some things. Sorry, it's written little, but we don't really care. This is a lot of research I've did about, well, groups that already did it. We have OData, we have Google, we have Doctrine Projects, we have the EETF here, and the W33 also. Usually, EETF group is a nice place to start, and we have James Nails from IBM that started to work on this. It's the same person that worked on patch, prefer header, on the JSON merge patch specification 2. He proposed some years ago a project to handle patch requests. Still a draft, not compliant for now. It says that we have an endpoint where we send everything. That we are going to use multi-part HTTP content type header. That each subquery is described in the payload separated by a delimited string. That each subquery is identified by a content ID to associate then the response. Because if we are sending everything like multiple requests in one, the response will be also multiple responses in one. And we need to identify which is which. And we cannot assume, he says, we cannot assume the execution order of each subquery. My application might maybe have different system and different way of handling them, and I cannot assume that it will do the process in the same order I have asked them. The main query, the first one I make on my /API patch, I cannot cache it, but eventually subqueries can be. Also, something I've not mentioned in my slides, the subqueries cannot be assumed as authorized because the first one is. It's not because my user that is authorized or authenticated can send a request on that patch operation that it can also, delete a resource. So we have to check this for each sub request. Okay, that's a good start. That's a good start. There is room for improvement. Again, if I cannot assume the execution order, I might have problems. Let's dive into how it works and then pursue our research with what others do. Typical content type multipart header is like this. Content type, multipart, slash, a type of multipart. Here it's mixed. Then I can add an attribute after the semicolon. Here it's a boundary attribute. And I throw in whatever string I like. Usually it's a generated one. It indicates that if I have multiple parts within my payload, it will be separated through this string, here prefixed by this double dash. And this string can be really anything. So I skip the first part of my HTTP request. It's small enough. I can say, okay, this will be a multipart. I have a blank line to say I'm finished my headers, and then I start with maybe text. This text is for humans, maybe to explain what they're going to have next. First separator, okay, here I have something interesting. Then a separation, maybe another request, another separation, but finishing by two double dash, by a double dash. So this is the end of my two sub requests. And then again, maybe text for humans. We have multiple definition of multipart content type. Is it big enough for you guys in the end? Yep. Can you read? Maybe. Okay. Thanks. Multipart mixed. This can contain anything. I will probably go for this one. I can have multipart alternative. This is what your email system uses. Usually you have your text form, HTML form, and you can have more advanced form. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a React application for your email. What it does is, I start with text. I can handle that. Let's see the next one. HTML, okay, I can handle that. Let's see the next. Oh, React, no, I can't. I switch back to the last I could handle. This is how alternative works. Digest, same thing, but it's sending a message or different messages from different people at the same time. Multipart parallel, which is kind of an extension of mixed. You can send everything you want, but you ensure that it will be executed in parallel if it's supported by the application behind. And subtlety. A sub-message can be a multipart itself. So I can have multiple inclusions like this. What others did in all of this? Google, when I looked at the APIs, are doing something quite similar to this. So I didn't have so much to learn there. There is OData from Microsoft, which is also similar, but with additions. Nice additions, and some that are less pain-free when you want to implement it, in that you are not into a Microsoft universe. In OData, you have dependencies between queries in the specification, which is nice, because if I follow the Snail specification, I can't rely on it. But they added a mechanism to have dependencies. I can also have references in the URL for subsequent queries, meaning I know by advance that I will use the result of the previous request in a second. The values of a response body in the query part of the URL or in the body of the subsequent queries can be used. Individual processing are in order of reception. This is different from Snail. We can stop at the first error, keep everything as it is, unless you have sent a prefer continue on error header. Also, you apply all or nothing. This is important. Maybe I have sent multiple requests. Maybe the third fails, and I need to roll back everything that has been done on the first and second. Right. And all that has been standardized, so I can assume that it's well done by OASIS and approved by the ISO ESG standard. Okay. I know that. Now I should probably go for OData, because that's exactly what I want to do. With some trickiness I will talk about later. I want to put it in PHP. What's good to know about PHP? We want to be able to parse that HTTP request, extract every part of it, the headers and the payload. When we are going to receive the thing, it's not going directly into PHP. Who's PHP developer here? Okay, some of you. Right. First and foremost, PHP receives everything through FCGI or CGI. I won't explain what this is. For modern version, you have the fast CGI, which is, well, a better way to send stuff to PHP, and usually it's served by FPM, a fast CGI process manager. It has a port that is open and everything is sent there by your server. What does it do, CGI? Well, it takes the entry and it will chop it in bits in different sections before sending it to your PHP. You have here the standard in parameters, the beginning of the request, and then you have the same chops that are reconstituted in the end for the error, the request, and the standard output. If I go look into the PHP implementation, I have this tab def enumeration that says, okay, I will send you all these bits here, and the one I am interested in is the standard input. Everything that is post data, so my payload basically, is sent there. Nice. Almost nice. PHP does a lot for me. It's easy as a developer, because then if I want to access anything from the URL, a get, a post, a file, an environment variable, everything is stored in specific variables. So I can just grab them. I don't have to parse anything. That's great. But here I want to parse everything. So I'm stuck. I don't have the choice. I have to find a solution hybrid in between where I use what PHP gave me and then parse the rest. Right. Here, some wrappers in PHP where I can grab some stuff. I want to get the PHP one, and in the PHP one there are a bunch of them. We can see that I have the std in, standard input. I might use this one. I also can use the input one, which is basically the standard input but in read-only, which is fair enough what I need. And in addition, it can be used as a stream. What is it so important to use it as a stream? Well, because if I am using this system to send like regular resources, like I want to create a user, I want to create another blog post, maybe an whatever operation. Okay, fair enough. It's small patch of data. But what if it's a big PDF, like megas, gigs of information? Let's say I want to deal with medical imagery, like a 3D scan. It's huge in data. I cannot just assume that I will have this kind of RAM, this kind of memory allowed to my PHP. So I have to deal with it as a stream. I started to look on the internet what exists to parse my PHP, my HTTP, request. I found an 8 years old library, too simplistic and not really good. Then I found this one, Riverline Multipart Parser, which is pretty nice. If you have to use it, please do. It's really, really well done. It has two maintainers I know, Mathieu Napoli here with Tobias Nayom. This is a symphonic core team. Nuno Maduro, which is an engineer at Laravel. So pretty safe to go. But this is a talk for API platform. And API platform, we try to not include so many dependencies, so I won't use this. It does too much for what I want. So I need to start from crash. This is what I've done so far, 41 files change and 2000 and some changes for my sequential operations with API platform. If you want to use it, who uses API platform here? No one yet? Okay. Shortly, I'm sure. Okay. When we activate API platform, we can say, okay, now I support the multipart format. I want to be able to receive this multipart mixed content type. Otherwise, if I don't do this, I am just thrown away by a 406 error. Then 406? Yes, 406. Then I have this OData activation with this batch endpoint. Eventually, I will bring more option in there, like security options, for instance, to say, okay, no, everyone cannot do this batch operation, only these roles, these users. Just by doing this, I activate this endpoint. Now, everyone is capable of using it. Right. But if I want to send messages, I want to send messages about, well, the other resources. Not this one is just an empty shell. Just something to mention. Here I am using Swagger UI. You can use eventually Redoc, readme.io, whatever solution you want to document your APIs. Just know that this is really not meant to be used for multipart operation if you want to use it as a sandbox. Sometimes like Swagger or Redoc, you have options to allow your user to try and test your API through the interface. It's not meant for this. What I did is I deactivated this option on this endpoint. It doesn't work. All right, it's a bit small. I will zoom in, but basically what we do is we create a resource. Oh shit, can't zoom in. Okay, I just described to you. I have a class in PHP. I have a metadata on top of it, which is API resource. So now it's available. Oh, I did zoom in. In my API, I now have this, my OData endpoint, and then all my CRUD operations for my greetings class, my greetings resource. If I want to send a first HTTP batch request with my multipart mixed content type, I start with my post operation. Obviously, if it has a payload, it has to be post on batch. Right, host, here I'm local, accept multipart mixed, content type multipart mixed, again, boundary, here I chose ABC. Why not? My content length will come. Here I have preamble, it can be ignored, just for humans. Then first separator, dash dash ABC. I do what? Well, here I have to assume that I have a full HTTP request. I can rewrite, it's not mandatory, I can rewrite the start line and say, okay, now for this one, it's a post on something else. Okay, I will create a new greetings resource. I accept that you enter me in application LD JSON, and the content type I will send to you is also application LD JSON with this nice JSON here. Second request, I want now to list every greeting there is with this get operations. Last marker, dash dash ABC dash dash, I'm finished. epilogue, this is for humans again. What do I expect in return? Then my API should respond for each. I just ditch the first response part. So here I have like a 200 response with headers. Then content type multipart mixed again. Of course, if I send multipart mixed, I expect that my server responds me with multipart mixed too. And then I have this, my separator dash dash and my string. Here, okay, first request 201 created, no problem. And I say maybe some HTTP headers. Then what? Then my content, right? I have my JSON here. I've inlined it because otherwise too big. Then separator again, dash dash my string. Here 200. Okay, let's see your collection. So here I have just the result of my creation. Here I have my collection. It's difficult to see, but I have a member here, which is an array of things, and I just have one for now. And parsing an HTTP parser like this is not easy, and maintaining it is not easy. What is easy? Dealing with JSON. JSON is easy. In OData specification, instead of sending multiple HTTP requests like this, I can also decide to send like a JSON with a request property, which is an array of what is supposed to be as a request. So here, my method is post on the URL API greetings. Also, I create a new greeting result with in my body this JSON here. And I use a content type application JSON. I accept a JSON LD as a return. Everything is the same, but in JSON, and which is nice because API platform is already able to create and deal with JSON format, right? Easier enough to maintain. And on the other side, you have the responses that are in the same quite format. Two differences though. Here I have an idea. Here I have a new thing, or data continue on error. Oh, okay, if I have an error, just continue, ignore it. And its IDs are meant to specify which response correspond to which. Okay, I have something different here. I have a depends one. This is something that we can do also with OData. We can say, okay, this one depends on the first one. If this fails, if this fails, this one cannot be executed. Here is embedded request. All right, here. I still have my multipart mixed with my boundary of ABC, have my preamble, my first separation here. I haven't get API greetings, which is an LD.json. All right, we've seen that. Then another separation, I have a new request, but this one is also a multipart mixed with different boundary, and this is important. I have a boundary DEF instead of ABC, and then I have my separation here. DEF, first request of my sub request, DEF again, DEF dash dash, I finish my sub request, and then again, I will finish with my ABC dash dash, I finish my inclusions. This type of inclusion is only possible in HTTP. Well, technically I could do it with the JSON format, but it's not specified in OData. This is missing. It would be considered as a hack. Okay. Just zoom in. And okay, the responses. So you get the idea. Where am I at? Okay, just zoom in. Okay. You've noticed the following. Nested batch request supports with HTTP format only. Each sub-operation has its own request, or if you are using the Symfony framework, then you have your own stacks for each request. So you have your own profiler, your debugging system for each request, which is nice. We use an operation post in API platform. I didn't mention it before. You are not allowed to use API platform yet, but we are using the modern operation system of API platform 3. So we can use any available operation options at some extent to put some conditions, some securities on them. Advanced usages, you have the continue on error that you can send on the prefer header to say everything has to continue even if there is an error. If you are dealing with Symfony, you can use the fact that Doctrine ORM offer nesting, I love my word, transaction, all right? So the fact is, if you open a transaction and then you have multiple sub-transactions, only the first one will matter. And this is important. The way I've implemented it is that every time I have multiple sub-requests in the Symfony framework, instead of going out of the system and going back into my API, I just keep the loop inside. So for now, it's only able to deal with already handled local endpoints, while it could be something outside your world. It could be something related to another API, something related to a microservice somewhere else. It's not possible yet in my implementation. It has to have a content ID to specify each request. What it does is it allows me to have references. This is what I meant before. Here I can use this $1 into the second request by saying, okay, maybe I will receive something from there, and the URL, the IRI from the response of the first request will be used as the URL for my second request. Here I have my reference and dependencies system. If I say that the ID 2 depends on the request